Hallchos, Shכנים, Chapter 1, the Laws of Neighbors. The purpose of these laws is to know the proper way to divide land among partners, how one should remove factors that may cause danger to one's neighbors, and to those people upon whom one's property borders. The laws concerning the privileges granted to a person upon whose land one's property borders. These laws are explained in the chapters that follow. 1. The following rules apply when a person purchases half of a field from a colleague. Two people together purchase a field from a colleague. They both inherited a field which was given to them as a gift. They took possession of ownerless land or property belonging to a convert who died without leaving Jewish heirs, i.e., any situation in which two people own land in partnership. If one of the partners asks to divide the property and take his portion alone, and the property is large enough to be divided, we compel the other partners to divide the property with him. If the property is not large enough to be divided, neither partner can require the other person to divide the property. Similar laws apply with regard to movable property. One day will apply when neither of the parties recognizes a specific portion of the property they share as his own, but rather both use the entire property equally. If, however, one of the partners recognizes a portion of the property as his own, each one has the right to compel the other partner to make it divided between his portion and his colleague's portion, although the property is not large enough to be divided. 2. In a situation where property is not large enough to be divided, or with regard to an entity that cannot be divided, e.g. a maid servant or utensil, if one of the partners tells the other, sell me your portion for this and this much, or buy my portion for the same price, his request is supported by the law. We compel the other partner to either sell his share to his colleague or to purchase his colleague's share from him. If, however, the other partner does not desire to purchase his partner's share or does not have the means to do so, we cannot compel his colleague to purchase his share from him even at the low market price, for his colleague may tell him, I do not want to buy, I want to sell. Therefore, the following laws apply if two brothers, one rich one poor, inherited from the father a bathhouse or an olive press. If the father made these premises for the purpose of hire, the two share the rental equally for as long as they desire to remain partners. If the father made these structures for personal use, the poor brother cannot force the rich brother to hire them out. Instead, they should use them as their father used them. The rich brother can, to the poor brother, purchase halls and crush them in an olive press, purchase servants, and have them come and wash in the bathhouse. The poor brother cannot compel the rich brother to purchase his portion unless the poor brother tells him, purchase my portion from me or sell me your portion, for I will borrow from others and purchase it, or sell to others and they will purchase it. If he makes such statements, this claim is supported by law. If each of the brothers says, I don't want to purchase your portion, I want to sell my portion, the property should be sold to others. The following rules apply if both of them say, I will sell, but instead each of them wishes to produce. The following rules apply if both of them say, I will not sell, but instead each of them wishes to purchase his colleague's portion, or neither of them desires to purchase his colleague's portion, nor to sell his own portion, but instead both desire to remain partners in the property. What should they do? If the place was fit to rent, they should hire it out and divide the rent. If the place was not fit to rent, they should alternate. If the property is a courtyard, they should dwell in it for each for a year at a time. The rationale for this ruling is that it is impossible for them to dwell in it together because of the lack of privacy, and it is not large enough to divide. A more frequent rotation is not employed because a person would not trouble himself to move from one courtyard to another every 30 days. Hence, the rotation is carried out from year to year. If the shared property is a bathhouse, both of them are allowed to enter at all times during the day. The same principle applies to any object that is fit to be used at all times. It is not usually hired out, e.g. a bathhouse, a mattress, or a Torah scroll. One cannot tell the other, use it one day and I'll use it the next day, for the other can claim, I want to use it every day. So time shares, not so much. Okay. 3. When one person rents from a colleague a portion of a courtyard or a field that is not large enough to divide, or two people rent such a property in partnership, each one can compel his colleague and tell him, either rent my portion from me or rent me your portion. If the property is large enough to divide, it should be divided. 4. You've probably been wondering about this. What is meant by a property being large enough to divide? That if it were divided among the partners, even the partner with a small share would receive a portion of the property large enough to be referred to by the same name that is used to refer to the entire entity. If, however, the name that is used to refer to the entire entity would not be used for this portion, it is not large enough to divide. What is implied whenever a courtyard does not contain 4 cubits by 4 cubits, it cannot be called a courtyard. Whenever a field is not large enough to sow 9 kabim of grain, it is not considered to be a field. Whenever a garden is not large enough to sow a half a kabim, is not considered to be a garden. Whenever an orchard is not large enough to sow 3 kabim, it is not considered to be an orchard. Therefore, a court is not divided among partners unless it is large enough for each of the partners to receive at least 4 cubits by 4 cubits. The field is not divided unless it is large enough for each of the partners to receive at least receive enough to sow 9 kabim. A garden is not divided unless it is large enough for each of the parts to receive at least enough to sow half a kav, and an orchard is not divided unless it is large enough for each of the parts to receive at least enough to sow 3 kav. Where does the above apply in Eretz Yisrael and land like it? In Babylonia and lands like it, by contrast, these parts must receive a larger measure. A field is not divided unless it is large enough for each of the partners to receive at least enough to require a day of plowing. An orchard is not divided unless it is large enough for each of the partners to receive at least 36 trees. This is the number that requires one person to tend to them for a day. A field is not watered with a utensil. A field that is watered with a utensil is not divided unless it is large enough for each of the partners to receive at least enough that a workman will spend a day watering it. 5. Should one not divide a hall, a large building, or a dovecote, a olive press, bathhouse regardless, unless each of the recipients receive a portion sufficient for himself. If one is dividing a bathhouse, each portion must be useful as a bathhouse. If one is dividing a dovecote, each portion must be useful as a dovecote. The same principle applies with regard to a garment or other objects. If the entity is not large enough to divide, its value is assessed. One can tell when it's fell apart, either sell to me or buy it from me. If the entity is not large enough to divide, but one partner says the other, let's divide this, even though the portions are not equal, I will take the small portion, you will take the large portion. We are not required to accept this proposition, for the other partner will tell them I do not desire to receive a gift. Instead, since the entity is not large enough for an equal division, we assess its financial value. Shchenim, chapter 2:1. The following laws apply with regard to courtyards in villages where every person builds a house for himself, and thus the court in between the two houses is used jointly by all the members of the two households. Every opening is granted 4 cubits in front of it for the entire length of the opening. With regard to the remainder of the courtyard, if there is enough to provide every partner with 4 cubits, but 4 cubits it is divided. If not, it is not divided for any courtyard that is not 4 cubits, but 4 cubits cannot be called a courtyard, as we have explained. What is implied? There were two partners one owned 2 houses in the courtyard, and the other owned 1. One who owns 2 houses is granted 4 cubits from the courtyard in front of the entire width of the entrances to each of his homes, even if the entrances are each 10 cubits wide. And we give the partner who owns 1 house 4 cubits in front of the entire width of the entrance to his home. With regard to the remainder of the courtyard, if it's 8 cubits by 4 cubits, so that each can receive a portion of at least 4 cubits by 4 cubits in addition to the area in front of their entrances, it is considered large enough to divide, and it should be divided. If it's smaller than this, it's not large enough to divide, and y'all just going to have a shared backyard. Get over it. Okay. 2. When a house in a courtyard has many entrances on all sides, is granted 4 cubits on every side. If the owner designates one entrance, the entrance to the house is granted the 4 cubits only opposite this entrance. 3. When a person can enter an exedra carrying his load, he is not granted these 4 cubits. If not, he is granted these 4 cubits for the sole reason our sages said that a person is granted 4 cubits for every entrance is that he can unload his burden. Therefore, a person is granted 4 cubits in front of a guard's room or a porch. If there are 5 structures that open up to a porch and the porch opens up to a courtyard, only the 4 cubits are granted. 5. A chicken coop is not granted 4 cubits. 6. When a house has a roof over it, but not over the second half, regardless of whether the roof portion is on the inside or toward the outside, it is not granted 4 cubits. 7. If the entrance of a house is closed off, if the owner is granted 4 cubits. If whoever the owner destroyed the door and closed it entirely, it is not granted 4 cubits. 8. When a house is smaller than 4 cubits, but 4 cubits, its owner is not granted 4 cubits in the courtyard. Thus, the following rule applies: if there is a court with 2 structures and at least one of them is smaller than this minimal size, if the courtyard contains 4 cubits for one owner and 4 cubits for the other, even though this measure reaches the entrance of the structure, the courtyard is divided. The manure in the courtyard should be divided according to the entrances. The levy of the king and the upkeep of his legions is divided according to the number of people living in the courtyard. 9. When partners desire to divide an entity that is not fit to be divided, they may divide it, although because of their actions it will no longer be called by the same name. With regard to holy scrolls, because even though the partner's desire, scrolls should not be divided. When these will apply when all sacred writings are contained in one scroll. But if the sacred writings are contained in 2 scrolls, they may be divided. 10. When partners desire to divide a place that is not large enough to be divided, each one has the right to retract until the actual division is made. This applies even when the decision was confirmed with a kinyan. For this is merely a kinyan concerning words, as we have explained. If whoever of the partners made a kinyan stating that this one desired a portion of the property in one direction, the other desired a portion of the property in the other direction, they cannot retract. Similarly, if each one went and manifested ownership over his portion, neither can retract, even though they did not confirm their commitment with a kinyan. 11. When brothers divide an estate by lottery, each one of them receives his lot. They all acquire the remainder of the property. The rationale is that with satisfaction they receive in the fact that they carried out the agreement that they arranged between themselves, each one concluded the matter and transferred the appropriate shares to his fellow. 12. When brothers divide an estate, they are considered as having purchased their shares from each other. Thus, none of them is entitled to claim from any of the others the right of passage, the right to erect a ladder, the right to maintain a window, or the right for the passage of an irrigation channel. For once they have divided the property, none of them has any right with regard to the property belonging to any of the other brother. Therefore, one brother may tell another when the field was owned by one person, he would cause this irrigation ditch to pass from one place to another. Now, however, that this field has come as my portion, now I have the right to close the irrigation ditch. Simply make block off window that looks over his portion and build next to that, even though it nullifies its usefulness. The same laws apply when 2 people buy a field in partnership from one person, then decide to divide the property. Neither has any right with regard to the portion of the colleague. The owner of either portion may dam the irrigation ditch or block off the windows. 13. When by contrast 2 people buy a field from 2 other people or from 2 brothers, neither has the right to dam the irrigation ditch or to change any other privileges that one of the sellers has established as his own, even though it is damaging to his colleague. 14. The following rule applies with regard to a courtyard owned in partnership that is large enough to divide one that was divided by consent, even though it is not large enough to divide. Each of the partners may compel the other to join the building of a wall in the middle of the courtyard so that one will not see the other when using the courtyard. The rationale is that damage caused by invasion of privacy is considered to be damage. Neither partner can claim that it is established fact that the courtyard has remained without a wall. Instead, even though the courtyard stood many years without a divider, one partner can compel the other to join in the building of a divider whenever he desires. They probably found this privacy clause in the penumbras of the Constitution. 15. The space where the wall will be built comes from both partners. How wide must the petition be? Everything depends on local custom. Even if the local custom is to make a petition from reeds or palm leaves, such a petition is made provided it does not leave open space for one neighbor to look and see his colleague. 16. Now, how high must the wall be? No smaller than 4 cubits. Similarly, in a garden, a person may compel a neighbor to separate the two gardens with a divider 10 handbreadths high, but in a stretch of field, there is no need to separate one person's stretch of field from another unless this is the local custom. If a person desires to make a distinction between his stretch of field and that belonging to his colleague, he must build a barrier in his own property. Therefore, he should make a sign of approximately a cubit by a cubit of mortar on the outside to indicate that the wall belongs to him. Therefore, if the wall falls, both land and the stones belong to him. If the wall is built by the two of them in partnership, they should build a projection on both sides. Therefore, if the wall falls, they both share the space and the stone. 17. The following applies when a person sells a garden to a colleague without any specifications. If it is attached to other gardens, we compel the purchaser to construct a fence between them. This applies even when the custom is not to erect fences in gardens. If whoever he sells a field without any specifications, we do not require him to erect a fence unless this is the local custom. 18. In a place where it is customary to use stone that are not hewn to build walls to divide courtyards or gardens, each of the partners should give 3 handbreadths. If they use hewn stones, each of the partners should give 2.5 handbreadths. If they use broken bricks, each of the partners should give 2 handbreadths. If they use bricks, each of the partners should give a handbreadth and a half. All these measures include the thickness of the wall and the mortar. Since the space of the wall belongs equally to both of them, should the wall fall, the space and the stones are shared equally between them. Even if the wall fell into the property of one of them, or one cleared all the stones into his property and claimed that his colleague sold him this portion or gave it as a gift, his word is not accepted. Instead, they are considered to belong to both of them, unless one of them proves his claim. Shchenim, chapter 3:1. When a wall that separates between two partners falls, each of the partners may compel the other to share in its construction until it is built to the height of 4 cubits, so that they will not see each other. We do not, however, compel a partner to build any higher than 4 cubits. The following rule applies: if one of the partners takes the initiative and builds the wall higher than 4 cubits, if the other colleague comes and builds another wall of his as high as the wall between them, we obligate that partner to pay his share in the additional height that is opposite his wall. What is implied? One person built a wall between himself and another partner, elevated to a height of 10 cubits. Afterwards, the other partner came and built another wall opposite it or at its side for the sake of making a room, and built that wall 6 cubits high. We obligate him to pay his share in the 2 cubits that were added to the minimum of 4 cubits, for it is obviously desired the additional height. Similarly, if he hewed out a place on the top of the wall between them to place beams or affix permanently there a large beam on which the others rest, we obligate him to pay his share of the entire 6 cubits as a colleague added for the minimum of 4 cubits, although we did not build the entire wall, for he revealed his intent that he desired the entire height of the wall. 2. The following was apply when one of the partners builds a wall 4 cubits high that separates between his property and his colleague's property, and demands that his colleagues pay the share of the cost. If the other colleague claims to have paid his share, we assume that he paid. He is required to show us that he paid, and he is then under no further obligation unless the plaintiff brings proof that he did not pay. If one partner demands of the other that he pay his share of the portion of the wall that he added above the minimum 4 cubits because he built next to it or opposite it, and the partner claims to have paid, his statements are not believed. Instead, the plaintiff is given the option of taking an oath while holding a sacred article that his defendant did not pay him, that he may then expropriate the money, as is the case regard to all those who take oaths and collect, unless the defendant brings proof that he paid him. 3. The following rules apply when a person owns one ruin in the midst of several ruins belonging to a colleague, although the colleague built a divider on one side of the owner's ruin, then on the second side, and then on the third side, and thus the ruin is enclosed from 3 sides. We do not obligate the owner to pay any of the costs, for the construction is of no benefit to him, since his ruin is still open to the public domain as was before. Therefore, if the builder also encloses the 4th side for him, thus the owner's ruin is totally enclosed by a petition, we require him to pay his share in the entire amount. He must pay half the costs that his colleague undertook in building the divider 4 cubits high around all 4 sides. It applies provided the place of the wall belongs to both of them. 4. If whoever the builder constructs the wall on his own property, it appears to me that the owner was charged only a small amount as the judges see fit, because he does not have the right to use the walls. If the person whose property was enclosed himself encloses the 4th side, he has revealed his consent, and he must pay half of the cost of the other 3 sides of the wall if the wall belongs to both of them. Similar principles apply in analogous situations. 5. Principles similar to those that govern walls dividing courtyards apply to the construction of guardrails and roofs. If there are 2 houses situated next to each other and their roofs are fit for use, one owner should make a guardrail for half of the roof where he dwells, and the other should make a guardrail for the half of the roof where he dwells. They should extend their partitions beyond the midpoints so that they will not see each other. This applies even if the houses are built on 2 sides of the public domain. Although the people from the public domain can see the person on his roof, each one can tell his colleague, the people in the public domain see me only during the day. When I stand on my roof, you, by contrast, see me at all times. 6. When a person's roof is close to a courtyard belonging to a neighbor, you should build a guardrail 4 cubits high between one roof and another. However, 4 cubits are not necessary, for people do not live on roofs, and there is no constant invasion of privacy. One must, nevertheless, make a divider 10 handbreadths high between one roof and another to make a distinction, so that if one enters another's property, it will be obvious that he is like a thief. 7. When there are 2 courtyards and one is situated above the other, the owner of the upper courtyard may not say, I will build from my level and higher. Instead, both of them must share in the building from below upward, and the owner of the upper courtyard must build from his level and higher alone. If the person's courtyard was higher than the roof belonging to a colleague, the owner of the higher property need not be concerned with the lower property at all. 8. When a wall belonging to a person that was located next to a garden belonging to a colleague falls, we compel the owner of the wall to remove the stones. If whoever the owner of the wall tells the owner of the garden, see, it came to you, they are yours, we do not need them. If whoever the owner of the garden desires the stones and agreed, saying yes, when he removes them, he acquires them. The owner of the wall may not retract, even if he tells the owner of the garden, here is the money for your costs, let me take the stones, let me take my stones. We do not heed him. If whoever the owner of the garden did not remove the stones, he does not acquire them. We assume that the owner of the wall made the statement only to procrastinate. 9. The following laws apply when there are 5 gardens that derive water from one spring, and the spring becomes impaired. All the owners of the garden must share in the repairs made by the owner of the first garden. Thus, the owner of the lowest garden must share in the repairs undertaken by all the others, but must make any repairs necessary in his own domain by himself. The owner of the first garden, by contrast, does not share in the repairs of the second, nor in any of those that are below him. Laws apply when the inhabitants of 5 courtyards pour water into one drain, and the drain becomes damaged. All the inhabitants of the courtyard share in the repairs of the lower one. Thus, the inhabitants of the highest courtyard must share in the repairs undertaken by all the others, but must make any necessary repairs to their own domain by themselves. The inhabitants of the lowest courtyard, by contrast, do not share in the repairs of the second, nor in those that are above it. 10. People with properties adjacent to a river who irrigate their fields with water from the river should do so in the sequence in which their properties are situated. If one of the owners desired to dam up the river so that the water would flow through his property first, and only afterward would he open it, another owner wants the river to remain open so that his property will be irrigated first. Whoever overcomes the other prevails. When a cistern is close to an irrigation ditch, it can be filled first as an expression of the ways of peace.